Greetings everyone, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, and I'm back to bring you another episode review from Season 8 of The Loud House. So let's get right into it. Today's episode is Wild Goss Chase. In this episode, Lola joins her school newspaper as a writer for a column about the latest gossip, and her stories cause humiliation for the people she wrote about. The first thing I thought of while watching this was the Season 1 episode, A Tattler's Tale. More specifically, the part near the end where Lola was talking to her stuffed animals about everything her siblings were talking about at their secrets meeting. That's more or less the same thing Lola does in this episode, going around her school trying to find something juicy and then sharing it with everyone. Given how she's known to tattle and gossip about others, and considering how she's a popular influence among her classmates, a lot of what Lola says and does in this episode fits perfectly with her character. She would be the kind of person who would try to cash in on the misery of others if it meant making herself more influential and popular. She's recommended to join the school paper by its editor, Jamie Hiller, the niece of Jesse Hiller, the editor of the Royal Woods Gazette. Apparently journalism runs in the Hiller family. Who knew? Originally, Lola couldn't find anything worth writing about when she first begins eavesdropping on her classmates, but she eventually finds success when she secretly notices Mrs. Johnson being the one responsible for the air horn gag she had been playing on Principal Huggins. Why Mrs. Johnson made this into a running gag, I have no idea. Then Lola sneaks around and takes pictures of Kayla engaging in a pretty disgusting act and Coach Bukowski whacking himself upside the head with a cricket bat. Not even Winston was going to be spared from his embarrassing moment. I was really surprised Lola had no second thoughts about humiliating the boy she had a crush on back in the Season 2 episode L is for Love. I'll admit, that part got me a little annoyed since I never would have expected Lola to do such a thing to someone who really seemed to like her when they first met. Speaking of characters, one of the biggest highlights would be the cameos from characters that had not been seen for a long time. This was Mrs. Johnson's first on-screen speaking role since Season 4. Some of Lincoln's classmates appear in the background, although I'm not sure why they're still in elementary school considering they should have moved up to middle school by now. And of course we see the long overdue return of Winston. I could tell right away he was voiced by Debbie Derryberry because he sounded so much like Jimmy Neutron. There's a little bit more I want to say about his character, but I'll get back to that in just a bit. Anyway, while Lola's stories make the front page of the newspaper with everyone loving what they're reading, the people she humiliated are forced to sit in the shadows away from everyone else and hide behind the same matching sunglasses. I'll admit, the pose Mrs. Johnson made while wearing those glasses was actually pretty cool looking. Now we come to the part of the story where Lola's desire to eavesdrop on Cheryl and Meryl resulted in her head getting stuck inside a fence. She wants Flip to get her unstuck before anyone sees her, but his rescue attempts not only fail to work, but Lola ends up looking all grimy and gross as a result. Eventually, the fire department is called in, and that's when Lola spots Winston taking notice of what's happening. She begs him not to tell anyone at school about what happened to her, but unlike Lola, Winston wasn't going to tell anyone because he's not that kind of person. Even though he's not the main protagonist, Winston was hands down the best character of the episode. He could have easily given Lola a taste of her own medicine by subjecting her to the same humiliation she put him through, and believe me, she definitely would have deserved it. However, Winston was the bigger person and took the high road by saying he wouldn't do something that mean-spirited to anyone, whereas Lola flat out said she'd gossip about what happened to her in a heartbeat. Winston points out that the major difference between himself and Lola is that he's actually aware of the damage that was caused to Lola's victims. Lola, on the other hand, was completely unaware of the actual reason why her victims were wearing dark sunglasses. She was more concerned about what would sell and make her look good and had no idea she had ruined a number of social lives. So yeah, I really liked how Winston practically shredded Lola's character by maturely and correctly pointing out how she's a cruel person who thinks very little of the effects her actions have on others. Definitely the best scene of the whole episode in my opinion. It's by this point Lola finally realizes her mistake and she decides to balance everything out by publishing her own embarrassing experience with the fence in the school paper. What I really liked about this final scene was that she willingly made a fool of herself. She not only did what Winston said he would never do, but it's also consistent with what she said earlier. Lola said if she saw someone in the predicament she was in, she would definitely gossip about it, and that's exactly what she did. In other words, rather than someone else giving her a taste of her own medicine, Lola willingly took that medicine herself, knowing full well she was going to be cast in the shadows. She compromised her own popularity to make things right with the people she hurt, and this got everyone to stop gossiping about her previous victims, setting all of them free. Well, almost everyone. Overall, this was a very by-the-books Lola episode, and a great one at that. Everything she did, from gossiping about others no matter the cost and then trying to protect her own reputation, was very much in line with her character. It was great seeing Winston for the first time since season 2, and his interaction with Lola by serving as the mature foil to the more immature lead character was very good. The return of Mrs. Johnson was a pleasant surprise, the lesson Lola learns about the downside of gossiping was handled decently, and her quitting the school paper following her voluntary humiliation was a solid way to end the story. With this being Lola's only spotlight episode of season 8, this was, like I said, very by the books. One last note, in the beginning Lola actually says the title of the episode. I know it has nothing to do with the story, I just like it when characters do that sort of thing. With that said, I give Wild Goss Chase an 8.9 out of 10. Well folks, that concludes my review of Wild Goss Chase. So I gotta ask, what did you guys think of this episode? Sound off in the comments below, and be sure to click that subscribe button for more Loud House related content. That's going to do it for me. I'll catch you guys for the next video, but until then, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, signing off. Peace out, home slices.